You may have seen my video last week documenting my experiment of relying on level 1 charging at home exclusively during the coldest week of the year while keeping my car parked outside. Today's video came from a rather stern request from Surf and Trucks. If you're watching this one's for you. As you might have pieced together by now, this video will go over what it's like living with an electric car, not charging at work or at home, and relying solely on DC fast charging. In the previous video, I had laid out 5 scenarios with differing indoor and outdoor parking situations with level 1 and level 2 charging possibilities or not. In that one, I went over the third scenario, that of being able to park outside with the addition of level 1 charging. There technically are 2 more stipulations to be added, that of being able to charge at work, as well as having access to a local DC fast charger, in this case, a supercharger. I opted not to add those to the original table as that would have added a ton of other scenarios and would have just complicated the matter. I left them out, but I'm bringing one of them back in this video, supercharging. Comparing this video to the last, my commute is still the same, about 65-ish kilometer round trip. I'll still be parking outside, I won't be charging at work as I typically do, and I will not be plugging in my car when I get home. And of course, I will try to replicate the Monday to Friday 9 to 5 schedule as I did in the last video. Somewhat unfortunately, this week's temperature was much warmer than last week, so the conditions are slightly more favorable for the range of my car. Follow me as I spend the next week going about my life using Tesla's supercharger network as the only way to fuel my car. The week started off on Monday as I left work with 100%. Well, I did precondition my car for a few minutes, so I ended up leaving with 98%. Although this week was warmer than the last, it was still cold enough for frost to build up on my car and make it hard to get in. That's the beauty of designed in California. I got home that night having used about 8% and arrived with 90%. Overnight, temperatures dropped a little bit and I ended up leaving with 87% as I set off to go to work on Tuesday. Blowing by traffic using the HOV lane with my green vehicle license plates, I arrived at work with 79%. Leaving that night with 76%, I arrived at home with 69%. Insert laughing sound effect here. Wednesday morning came around and I departed with 60%. A reminder that I did not lose 9% overnight and that the battery was simply holding a certain percentage hostage until it warms up, which is what that little snowflake icon is. Ended up making it to work with 53%. Wednesday night, I made my way back home with 52%, and after getting my daily dose of eye candy, made it back home with 44%. If you watched my level 1 charging at home video last week, you'll know that Thursdays are typically my day off, which makes it slightly difficult to replicate a Monday to Friday 9 to 5 schedule as many people have. In that video, the car sat all day not plugged in, which changed this week as I drove to meet up my girlfriend to go on a hike. I drove right past the Hamilton Superchargers as I didn't quite yet need to charge and ended up making it back home with 33%. If this were a normal work day, I'd imagine I'd currently be in the mid-20s as opposed to the low 30s. Friday morning, I left the house with 28% and drove past the Burlington Superchargers, which I would visit later that day on my drive home. I arrived at work with 18% and I did not plug in, like I've been doing all week for this video. Now at 17%, it was time to go use a supercharger for the first time, as if I wouldn't, I'd be making it home with about 8%, which would not be enough to make it to work the next day. Of course, unless I hypermiled and, did not use any heat, which I was not about to do. Quick tip, before going to a supercharger, be sure to set it as a destination, as your battery will precondition beforehand, allowing you to charge faster. I arrived at the supercharger, which was a version 2, so 150 kilowatt. I could have gone to the Oakville supercharger close to my work to get 250 kilowatt, and charge even faster, but I wanted to go to this one as it's on my way home and I have not filmed a Supercharger review video yet for this location, so I just wanted to get two birds stoned at once. The Burlington Supercharger review will go live a few days after this video for those who are interested. The charging peaked a little over 140 kilowatt, and after shooting the other video and doing a little bit of work, my state of charge was right back up to 75% about 35 minutes and $25 later. I got home Friday night with 71%. Saturday morning, I left for work with 69%, and after doing a quick detour to get some breakfast, I arrived at work with 59%. Leaving work for the last time that week, my state of charge indicated 54% and 42% when I got home, as I did drive a little further to pick up my girlfriend. Not much left of this challenge at this point. Woke up Sunday morning to a pretty frosty car and it was still sitting at 42%. After we ran a few errands, we were at 32% on our way to the waterfront for a walk, which I could have charged on a level 2 charger for the near about 2 hours that we were there, but opted not to in the spirit of this challenge. A reminder, folks, if you have the opportunity to charge while your car just sits there doing nothing, might as well charge. Remember the acronym ABC, always be charging. Got home with 24%, which I was not comfortable with to get to work the next day, so I stopped at the Hamilton Superchargers where I plugged in with 17%, charged for 10 minutes, and got up to 35%. This charging stop was just shy of $6.
Please no paparazzi.
Got home with 33% for the last night of not charging at home and or at work. Monday morning came along and marked 1 week of this challenge. I left with 29% and arrived at work with 20%. And that completes my 1 week challenge of relying on Superchargers as the only method of charging my car. Here are my thoughts. Of course, I knew this was going to be possible and that I was going to make it. It was more so of a question of how often and how long I would have to spend at Superchargers that week. Of course, also how much it would all cost. The conclusion from this short experiment is that, for my usage, I'd be visiting a Supercharger probably 2, maybe 3 times a week and would need to account for about an hour, maybe more, and about $50 to continue this way. I did start the week off with 100%, and the temperatures weren't insanely low, which did help my case. And as a reminder, I do have a 2018 long-range rear-wheel drive Model 3. So I could easily see if you had, for example, a 2016 Model X 60D with the same driving needs and habits as myself, you'd probably need to be at a Supercharger about 3 to 4 times a week. However, if you had a 23 Model S long range, for example, you'd probably only need to stop once, maybe twice. At the end of the day, it depends on your level of comfort or risk aversion regarding your state of charge. Looking at my graph, you can easily see there are 2 areas between the kind of Wednesday to Friday and Saturday to Sunday where I could have stopped to supercharge or stopped to charge for longer than I did. Likely the number one concern or maybe comment this video might get are going to be along the lines of, well, what if you need to go somewhere and you don't have enough charge? Which is valid, but I don't think is much of a concern, especially after having driving electric vehicles for nearly a decade now. I believe the underlying issue is planning for charging and how you'd spend your time while stopped at the supercharger. Of course, if you can charge at home and or at work, you don't have to plan anything because your car just charges the entire time it sits. Anyways, as I say, for my use, I figure I'd only have to stop about twice a week for roughly 30 minutes each. Now, does that mean I have to leave 30 minutes earlier to get to work? Or do I get home 30 minutes later after work? And if it's on my day off, do I go out of my way to visit a supercharger for 30 minutes? Then there's the question of, once charging, what do you do? Of course, the sensible thing would be to make the most of your time and to do something that you might otherwise be doing if you'd just be at home sitting around. Perhaps answering emails, reading a book, or catching up on a show that you've been watching. My conclusion is that although this way of owning an EV is possible, I don't think that I could own one if I wasn't able to charge at home and or at work. The occasional stop at a supercharger, when not for road tripping reasons, of course, I'm sure is fine, but a consistent detour of an hour plus a week, it does add up. Of course, there's the other underlying issue of DC fast charging not being as healthy for the battery than level 1 or level 2 AC charging, but that's for another video. What do you guys think? I'd love to hear from you in the comments if this is your reality and how you get along with it. Of course, also let me know how you found this video. Is this interesting? Am I completely out to lunch? Have I drank the Kool-Aid? Anyways, thanks for watching and subscribing. We'll see you in the next one.